The day my daughter was born, the first thing his mother said wasn't congratulations. It was, "Are you sure she's his?" I laughed, thinking she was joking. But she wasn't. Her face was pinched, her voice sharp. My husband, Elias, squeezed my hand and muttered something about hormones. But the damage was done. They all stared at my daughter's brown skin, her dark curls, as if she were a stranger. I held her tighter. I should have known then that this wouldn't stop. I thought time would ease their suspicion. Instead, it made them bolder, louder, more dangerous. It started small. Side comments. Quick glances. Elias's sister once said, "She's adorable. Looks like no one I know." His aunt followed up with, "You sure there wasn't a mix-up at the hospital?" The room would fall silent, and Elias would chuckle like it was harmless. But I felt the knife twist every time. They wanted me to react. I didn't. I took notes. Mental ones. And as weeks turned into months, I noticed something else. Elias had stopped defending me. He became a bystander in his own home. And that told me more than their accusations ever could. When Zara turned 1, they refused to come to her birthday party. Said they had family obligations. I guess we didn't count. Elias made excuses for them. They'll warm up eventually. But he was lying to himself. Or maybe he was lying to me. Either way, I didn't buy it. And the moment I stopped needing their approval was the moment I started preparing for war. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity. I wanted truth. And most of all, I wanted silence. Because peace doesn't come from begging. It comes from knowing. So, I got ready to collect proof. I asked Elias one night, casually, if he'd ever thought about a DNA test, just for fun. "You know," I said, "for one of those ancestry kits. Might be cool to see what Zara inherited." He stiffened, then laughed it off. "We don't need that." But I saw the flicker in his eyes. The fear. The guilt. It wasn't about Zara. It was about something else. I filed that away. And the next morning, when he left for work, I swabbed her cheek myself. Just one swipe. Simple. Clean. Necessary. I sent it in with my name and his. The results would speak. A week later, his mother showed up at my door with a folded paper in her purse. A blank and signed DNA test request. She dropped it on the counter and said, "We need to talk. This has gone on long enough." I nodded and smiled. "You're right. Let's clear this up once and for all." She looked surprised. I think she expected a fight. What she didn't expect was my calm. Or that I'd already mailed the test. She thought she was in control. She wasn't. She was walking into my game. And I had more pieces on the board. 2 days after that, I received Zara's results. 99.98% matched to Elias. I stared at it for a long time, not because I doubted it, but because I knew this was only step 1. I printed it out and placed it neatly into a folder. But something told me this wouldn't satisfy them. And I was right. At dinner that weekend, his father leaned over and said, "You know, these tests can be wrong." I raised an eyebrow. "Maybe we should all take one," I said. "Just to be safe." The table went quiet. Elias choked on his drink. That was my confirmation. His parents looked at each other, uneasy, unsure. Elias's mother tried to laugh it off. "That's not necessary." But I tilted my head and smiled. "Oh, I think it is. After all, if Zara's test could be doubted, shouldn't everyone be willing to prove their truth?" I saw it then, the crack in the porcelain mask. His father dropped his fork. Elias went pale. I leaned back in my chair and waited. No one said a word for the rest of the meal. But I could feel it. The shift. The panic. They'd opened the door, and I was about to blow it off its hinges. That night, Elias confronted me. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. "You know it's just going to stir things up." I looked him dead in the eye. "I didn't stir anything. They did." He didn't reply. Because he knew. Deep down, he'd heard the rumors too. I just happened to believe them enough to verify. "Do you have something to tell me?" I asked. He shook his head. But it wasn't convincing. And in that silence, I saw it. The fear of being unmasked. I walked past him, picked up the phone, and scheduled 3 more DNA kits. I sent the new kits to their house personally. No explanation. Just a note that said, "Since the truth matters so much, let's all be transparent." I knew they wouldn't refuse. That would be admitting guilt. And in their world, appearances mattered more than honesty. I checked the tracking updates daily. When I saw they'd been delivered, I smiled to myself. Because now, everything was in motion. The trap was set. And the best part? They thought they were still in control. But I was done being underestimated. This time, I was holding the match. As I rocked Zara to sleep that night, she curled her fingers around mine. I kissed her forehead and whispered, "They don't get to define you. They never will." In her eyes, I saw innocence. In my chest, I felt fire. They wanted a test. They were about to get more than they ever bargained for. This wasn't just about paternity. This was about legacy.
Shame. Truth.
And destruction. And I wouldn't lift a finger in rage. Only in revelation. They drew first blood. I'd be the last to bleed. And they would never see it coming. The test results came in on a rainy Thursday morning. I remember because the storm outside matched the tension brewing inside me. The envelope was thick, too thick. I opened it carefully, hand steady, heart ice cold. First came Elias's father's result. Then his mother's. The numbers hit like a freight train. His mother wasn't his biological mother. His father wasn't even close. Elias, the man I married, the man who called me paranoid, was adopted. But no one ever told him. And now, the truth was mine to deliver. Or detonate. I chose the latter. I waited until Sunday dinner. Their little kingdom of tradition. Elias's mother always demanded prayer before meals, even though her soul was as cold as her food. I sat at the table, the results in a plain white envelope on my lap. They passed dishes like nothing was brewing. Then Elias said, "You had something to share?" I nodded, smiled, and handed the envelope across the table. His mother looked amused. His father looked nervous. I watched as they opened it, watched their faces collapse in real time. The fork clattered. The silence screamed. His mother gasped, clutching her chest like she was the victim. "Where did you get this?" she spat. I stayed silent. Elias looked from me to them. "What is it?" he asked. No one answered.
So I did.
They wanted proof about our daughter. I thought it was fair to get proof about everything else too. His father stood up, shaking. "You had no right." I smiled. "Didn't I? You questioned my child's blood. All I did was follow the logic." Elias snatched the papers from their hands and read. His breath caught. His knees buckled. What the hell is this? That's when it all unraveled. His mother tried to play it off, said it was a mistake, a mix-up. But Elias wasn't stupid. He turned to his father. "Is this true?" The man who once called me a liar couldn't even look his son in the eye. "We were going to tell you," he muttered. "When?" Elias shouted. "When I was 50. When I died not knowing who I really was." I could have stopped it. Could have comforted him. But I didn't. This wasn't my mess to clean. I wasn't the one who buried truth in shame and called it love. His sister tried to calm everyone down. "We're still a family," she said. But her voice shook. Because she knew. The foundation cracked the moment they doubted Zara. This wasn't just betrayal. This was identity theft in slow motion. They took Elias's right to know. And for what? To save face? To hide scandal? I didn't pity them. I wasn't raised to protect cowards. They set fire to my name, and I returned the match to their legacy. All I did was pull the veil off a lie they were too proud to bury. That night, Elias packed a bag and left with Zara and me. He didn't say much, just stared out the window. "I don't know who I am," he finally whispered. I looked at him. "Then start with who you're not." He nodded slowly. "And I'm not them." I tucked Zara into her car seat. The rain hadn't stopped, but the air felt lighter, like truth had finally cleared the room. Elias turned to me, eyes red. "Why didn't they tell me?" I didn't answer. Because I knew the truth. Shame builds walls, but love tears them down. They never really loved him. For days, they called and begged for us to come back. His mother left voicemails full of tears. "You're still our son," she said. But he didn't return a single call. He moved in silence, processing, unraveling. I let him. He needed to burn the old version of himself before stepping into the new. And while he grieved, I planned. Because I wasn't done. The world would know. Not through drama. Through documentation. Elias deserved to rebuild. But first, I'd make sure his past never controlled him again. Truth was no longer a secret. It was a weapon. I contacted a journalist I trusted. Told her everything. She ran the story under pseudonyms, but the details were clear. A prestigious family hiding adoption, questioning the paternity of a biracial grandchild, then unraveling under DNA results. The article went viral.
People guessed.
But I didn't care. Let them squirm. Let them sweat. What mattered was that the story was no longer mine to carry alone. The burden had been redistributed. And the legacy of silence they built? It was now ash beneath public scrutiny. And that felt better than revenge ever could. Elias eventually found his biological parents, quiet people, humble, who never wanted to give him up, but were forced to. They'd been looking for him too. I watched the reunion from a distance, holding Zara. I didn't need to be the center. I'd already done my part. When his mother called again, I answered. She begged for forgiveness. "He's still my son," she cried. I paused, then whispered. "No. He was your secret. Now he's free." I hung up, and for the first time in years, I felt clean.
Light.
They tested my child. I tested their entire bloodline. I won. 2 weeks passed. Silence filled the void where their insults used to be. But I knew silence doesn't mean peace. It means plotting. Elias's parents tried to save face, spinning lies, calling it a family misunderstanding. They even told relatives I had manipulated him.
Typical.
When they couldn't control the truth, they attacked the messenger. But I had receipts, screenshots, voicemails. I wasn't playing fair anymore. They tested my child. I buried their legacy. And still, they didn't see the final move coming. Because this wasn't just about Elias. It was about Zara's place in the world, and I was building her throne. They invited Elias to a family reconciliation brunch. I told him to go.
Alone.
No confrontation. Just observe.
He did.
And came back with stories that made my blood boil. They had a photo album ready, pictures of his childhood, as if that erased the betrayal. His mother cried on cue. His father offered business shares to win him back. But none of it worked. Elias said nothing, just nodded, smiled politely, and left. He came home, dropped the photo album on the kitchen counter, and said, "They're scared. They should be." I looked at him.
Good.
They're about to be terrified. I launched the documentary 3 days later. It was anonymous, professionally filmed, voice modulated. No names. But the story was clear enough. An elite family hiding an adoption. Racism disguised as concern. Paternity tests used as weapons. A woman defending her child with truth. The response was overwhelming. Comments poured in. People guessed who it was. And the guesses weren't wrong. Their church board removed his father from leadership. His mother lost her charity sponsor. The local newspaper ran a feature. Family legacy unravels under DNA scandal. I watched it all unfold with a glass of wine. I didn't celebrate. I declared closure. Elias's aunt reached out next. "You've made your point," she said coldly. I replied, "No. I made theirs. I just said it louder." Because the point was never vengeance, it was restoration. They tried to exile Zara with suspicion. I returned the suspicion with truth so sharp, it cut through bloodlines. The same people who once whispered behind our backs now whispered about them. And they couldn't escape it. Because lies decay quietly. But truth rots loudly. Every rumor they seeded grew into a tree that shaded them from acceptance. They wanted purity. I gave them exposure. Elias finally changed his name. Legally. Dropped theirs. Took mine. Said he didn't want Zara carrying a name that almost erased her. I cried, Because that wasn't just paperwork. That was reclamation. That was love redrawn on new terms. We celebrated quietly, as a family. No fanfare. Just freedom. And I knew, as I watched him tuck Zara into bed with that new surname stitched across her pajamas, that this was the legacy we fought for. Not titles. Not bloodlines.
Truth.
Identity.
Choice.
His parents tried one last time. They sent a letter, apologizing, offering money for Zara's education. A desperate bribe disguised as concern. I burned it. Elias didn't even read it. That chapter's closed, he said. We're writing our own book now. And I believed him. Because the man who once stood between me and peace now stood beside me, holding the match as we lit their dynasty on fire.
They wanted a DNA test.
I gave them one. But what they never expected was that it wouldn't be mine that broke them. It would be their own. The news cycle died down, but the damage lingered. Their name, once revered, was now whispered like a cautionary tale. But even then they didn't learn. His parents hired a lawyer to protect the family image. As if reputation was the victim here. As if Zara didn't exist. That's when I decided I wouldn't just end this. I would erase it. No more warnings. No more middle ground. I told Elias, it's time we sever everything. Publicly. He hesitated, not because he loved them, he didn't. But because he feared what full closure might cost. I didn't. I had already paid in full. So we filed a formal statement, published it in the paper they once donated to. We, Elias and Nova Odessa, distance ourselves from all legal, financial, and ancestral ties to the Monroe family name. We recognize no affiliation. We seek no inheritance. We stand on a legacy of truth, not tradition. The backlash was instant. How dare we disown them? But that was the lie unraveling. They thought their name was gold. Untouchable. I reminded them gold melts. And reputations rot, especially when they're built on secrets and supremacy. They held a press conference.
Tried to spin it.
Called us wayward. Said we'd been misled by outsiders. The irony? I was never an outsider. I was their family, until they decided skin tone invalidated kinship. Elias watched the video, laughed once, then deleted it.
Let them talk, he said.
We're living.
And we did.
We traveled. Took Zara to museums. Enrolled her in coding classes. Built a new legacy, quietly, but fiercely. One truth at a time. I started a podcast, Silent Seeds. Stories like mine. Women who were erased and came back louder. It grew fast. Fast enough that someone from the Monroe Circle messaged me under a fake name, begging for a chance to share their side. I smiled. Declined. Because this story wasn't theirs anymore. They had center stage for decades. They used it to silence. I was done offering mics to cowards. Zara asked once, why don't we visit Grandma and Grandpa? I knelt beside her. Because they don't know how to love you properly. She nodded. Kids understand more than we think.
She didn't ask again.
And I knew, in that moment, the curse had broken. The cycle had ended. Not with a court ruling or a fight, but with a child's quiet acceptance of boundaries. That was the real revenge. Years passed. Elias was offered a chance to return to the family firm. New management. Clean slate. He declined. There's nothing for me there, he said. Except ashes. And he was right. What they burned, they couldn't rebuild. What they doubted, we magnified. Our daughter. Our love. Our story. And in every photo we took, every moment we documented, we buried their shame under the legacy we made. The last time I saw them was at a charity gala. They looked smaller somehow. Not just older, emptier. Their smiles faltered when they saw us. I wore red. Unapologetically vibrant. Zara held my hand. And Elias, he walked in with his head high, my last name stitched into his tuxedo collar.
We didn't speak to them. Didn't need to.
Our presence was louder than anything we could have said. They asked for a DNA test. Thought they'd prove we didn't belong. Instead, they proved they were never worthy of us. And now their bloodline ends with me. The final blow wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It came in the form of a letter, hand-delivered to the Monroe's estate, sealed in crimson wax. Inside was a framed portrait, Zara on the cover of Young Innovators Quarterly, titled The Girl Who Redefined Genius. Beneath it, a note written in Zara's handwriting. Thank you for your doubt. It made me curious. That was the final nail. Not revenge. Recognition. They had asked for proof. DNA, loyalty, lineage. We gave them something else. Undeniable excellence. No courtroom. No apology. Just legacy they could never claim. We started our own foundation, the Nova Initiative, a grant for biracial and underrepresented children in STEM. Its launch date? The anniversary of their failed paternity suit.
Poetic?
Maybe.
Petty?
A little. Powerful? Absolutely. And people noticed. Emails poured in. Partners reached out. Even estranged relatives whispered apologies. But we weren't building for them. We were building for every child they called not enough. For every woman who had to prove her child's right to exist. And in every keynote speech I gave, I started with, this story began with a question. Whose child is that? Here's your answer. Elias changed his last name to Odessa. Not as a rejection, but a rebirth. I want her to know who she comes from, he said. And I want her to be proud. The headlines loved it. Ex-heir cuts ties to dynasty. Son breaks away, builds own empire. And they weren't wrong. But the real empire? It wasn't in assets or architecture. It was in the way Zara smiled when she solved problems, in the way Elias looked at her like she was the center of his universe. That's inheritance. That's bloodline. The Monroes tried to reclaim the narrative. Posted an old photo of Elias as a baby, captioned, "You can't erase where you come from." But they were wrong. We didn't erase anything. We transformed it, took the broken pieces, and built something unrecognizable. Something better. Something real. One day, Zara came home from school holding a family tree assignment. Where do I put them? She asked.
Meaning them.
The ones who questioned her, who denied her. I took a deep breath, then said, You don't. She blinked, then smiled.
Cool.
She filled the branches with names that mattered, friends, mentors, people who showed up. Blood never made us a family. Love did.
Truth did.
And choice sealed it. At the end of your showcase, Zara stood in front of the entire auditorium. My name is Zara Odessa, she said. My mom is the strongest woman I know. My dad chose us. My family chose love over legacy. And I'm building the future with both of their names. Standing ovation. I didn't cry. I howled silently inside. Because that was the loudest ending I could have dreamed of. Years from now, maybe someone will stumble across the story. Maybe they'll wonder what happened to the Monroes. I hope they find nothing. No power. No legacy. Just a footnote. A warning. A vanished monument. And, in its place, our story. Zara's rise. Elias' courage. My fire. A bloodline redefined not by genetics, but by grit. A dynasty not inherited, but earned. They asked for a DNA test. What they got was a legacy they can never touch. And we're just getting started.